You are probably going to be a very successful computer person. You're gonna go through life thinking that girls don't like you because you're a nerd. And I want you to know from the bottom of my heart that that won't be true. It'll be because you're an asshole.
For the sake of this analogy, and in a few weird dreams I won't get into right now, I am Rooney Mara in this scene. And Jesse Eisenberg, he's Jonathan Blow. Let's talk about why I hate The Witness. The Witness, Jonathan Blow's long-awaited follow-up to the indie hit Braid, is an open-world puzzle game where you can venture to every corner of a large island, walk up to panels, and solve line puzzles. That's it. You walk around a gorgeous, empty world and move your cursor through a grid, and then you do it again. This game was in development for 8 years and costs $40 at retail price. If it sounds like a game with such little actual gameplay that it could run on your iPhone, congrats, because The Witness was ported to your pocket with no apparent drop in quality. I do not say that as an endorsement. I'm not going to go over every aspect of The Witness, partially because it'd be a major headache and require me to replay far more of this game than I would care to, but also because Joseph Anderson, someone far smarter than me, already made a video on it. I highly recommend it. Instead, I'm just going to talk about the puzzle design in The Witness, and why, to me, the puzzles come across more as Jonathan Blow's application to Tomorrowland rather than a game. Blow is clearly a very smart man, and I have the utmost respect for him using his intelligence to make thoughtful and challenging games. Braid was one of the defining games for me as a young boy. Along with Limbo and Portal, it makes up my trifecta of the 3 games that made me truly fall in love with the medium. I wouldn't trade that experience for anything, so there's a part of me that's completely okay with Blow spending his time making obscure Mensa tests as a sort of cosmic retribution for the masterwork that is Braid. But as much as I hate to say it, that part of me gets really, really quiet when I'm staring down the barrel of a puzzle that's been burned into my retina for 30 plus minutes, holding my breath in anticipation of Eureka, but instead feeling utterly dumbfounded. Puzzle games are made up of Eureka moments, and The Witness does have them for a few euphoric seconds before the game edges me for another half hour with no progress until either I have a breakthrough or I am broken and I pick up a guide. I don't have a problem contemplating a puzzle, in fact, I love it, but only when I feel like it is solvable. For context, let's discuss this puzzle from the beginning of the similarly dense puzzle game Infinifactory. This game, where you place conveyor belts designed to transport blocks from one end of the stage to the other, is infinitely, pun intended, more complex than The Witness. Not only does it feel like a video game proper with the 3D landscape being used to its full potential, it has so many different ways to succeed that everything feels personalized, and the success you gain is all due to your intelligence and intuition. The beauty of Infinifactory is that it doesn't care if you complete its puzzles properly, it only cares if you complete them at all. Infinifactory is proud that you can complete its many puzzles. The Witness is proud that you can't. Much like a pen and paper puzzle, it's less about thinking and more about thinking like the puzzle's creator. And while that's not an inherent failure, it severely limits the capabilities of what a video game can be. The Witness is only a video game so you can take in the majestic scenery between cursor-based line puzzles. Everything else, with little exceptions, most of which take place after 10 or so hours of gameplay, could be solved with a pen and paper. For instance, this series of swamp puzzles, while interesting at first, is not complicated enough to sustain the time it takes. Instead of being complicated, the game becomes difficult. Not difficult like Infinifactory, it's a kind of difficulty that pads out the game's playtime by being so painfully obtuse that nothing feels earned, only persevered through. There are 2 kinds of puzzles in The Witness. The first one happens only a few times, where the game actually feels like a game with a gradual difficulty curve that feels genuine and natural. The first few of these swamp puzzles felt like this, with a complex but understandable mechanic. In the case of these swamp puzzles though, once the blue negative blocks get brought in, a concept that is not explained clearly enough in The Witness's deep hatred of any verbal direction, the puzzles go from charmingly challenging to something where a guide is required. If someone told me they completed every single puzzle in The Witness without a guide, I would not believe them. The amount of times you'll find yourself subservient to the game's design will vary, but there will always be 1 or 2. I have a pretty strict rule for not going to a guide unless confronted with post-game challenges, particularly collectible or completionist bonuses that at times are so difficult it's boggling. While this can sometimes be frustrating, such as with the Riddler trophies in the Arkham games, it doesn't bother me as much because it's designed for those wanting to stick around in the game after it's beat. It's not something that you are required to do before you feel like you've gotten your money's worth out of a game. And yes, I know that you only need to solve 7 out of the 11 worlds in The Witness to progress far enough to reach the final section and beat the game, but there are too many examples that even if you avoid the swamp section,
hello there!
You will inevitably come across some puzzles that fit my previous description. If I feel like a game isn't being difficult just for the sake of being difficult, I will stick with it for a long time. In this puzzle in Portal, a simple puzzle that is so time sensitive that it often takes me a while during a playthrough to pull it off, I'm often stuck replaying it over and over again. But I stick with it because the solution is in sight, and I'm equipped with what I need to progress even if my skill level isn't up to snuff. When I lose this puzzle, it's my fault. When I'm stuck on a puzzle in The Witness, for the most part, I never feel like it's my failing as a player, although I'm sure many people would disagree with that statement. I must admit, I was absolutely in love with the first few hours of The Witness. The puzzles were fresh and exciting, and I felt constantly rewarded by the game opening itself up to me. But at a certain point I realized that such a sense of accomplishment was merely a byproduct of the game setting up its main trick, to tell me how much smarter Jonathan Blow is than me. Because he thought of these magnificent puzzles, and I couldn't figure them out. When does a game stop becoming a game and starts becoming an early draft of a religious text by someone who, if they weren't making games, would be dangerously close to starting a cult? The Witness constantly toes this line, never stepping enough in one direction for the answer to be clear-cut. For example, Superhot has challenging shooter puzzles with time and inventory management. They're complicated, but you feel rewarded with every challenge beaten, giving a new sense of scope to the first-person shooter genre. Limbo uses a minimalist art style to make complicated platformer puzzles that remain elegant because of its shadow-based visuals and how open the camera is. Portal, my favorite game of all time, rocked my world when I was 12 because of how it forced me to change my perspective and analyze the world in a whole new way. It made walking from point A to point B another element to be contemplated instead of just a means to an end. Even Braid, the game that started my love for Jonathan Blow, used time in such a way that could only be possible in an interactive medium. So how do you make 500 plus line puzzles interesting in a medium that is ripe with constant challenges to, and refinements of, the form that make the most of their audiovisual presentation? The short answer is you don't, but the long answer is you ramp up the difficulty and obtuseness of the puzzle so that they become nigh unplayable. The Witness has no business being a video game, but it is, and the product is a $40, 20-hour-long testament to how many gimmicks and curveballs Blow can throw at a line puzzle. As much as I hate to say it, I am exiting the church. I am leaving the convent. I am putting down the Kool-Aid. Jonathan Blow, I'm happy that you're league smarter than I am, seriously. We need geniuses, and from the designs of these puzzles alone, I think it's safe to say that Jonathan Blow is, in fact, a genius. I couldn't come up with half of the things in The Witness, and I have no desire to, because I am not a genius. The Witness didn't teach me a lot in the 20 hours I spent in its world, but it taught me that.